A couple weeks ago, I did a live stream updating on the war in Iran and also going over Israel's current actions in Lebanon. If you weren't aware, while this war in Iran is happening, Israel is conducting a bombing campaign and subsequent full invasion on parts of Lebanon south of the Litani River. This is in response to Hezbollah's retaliatory missile strikes after the US-Israeli assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei. They have been indiscriminately bombing them, destroying not only military but civilian infrastructure too, displacing over 1 million Lebanese people where they stated don't expect to come back anytime soon. This is what happened 1 hour after Israel warned all Lebanese citizens south of the Litani to evacuate. I'm not sure when entire apartment buildings became valid military targets, but this isn't just an isolated incident. This is official footage released by the IDF showing them destroying apartment buildings in Beirut. They've claimed that this is being used for Hezbollah's military infrastructure without any evidence, displacing over 1 million Lebanese citizens so far. It doesn't even stop there. They've now designated ambulances and hospitals valid targets without any evidence, claiming that Hezbollah uses them for military purposes.
Town of Brish Callaway, where 2 days ago the Israeli army targeted a medical center with an airstrike, killing 12 medical staff. The Israeli army has killed 20 medical staff and first responders in a series of blatant war crimes aimed at terrorizing the population in the south and in Beirut and in the Bekaa. Per the Lebanese Ministry of Health, 826 people have been killed since March 2nd. 106 of those have been children. Thousands more have been wounded.
And again, this isn't just some isolated incident. There's been 26 paramedics killed and over 41 injured in Israeli attacks from between March 2nd to March 14th. Now, if you're wondering why you've probably never heard of any of this, is because of how dangerous it is for reporters to even attempt to report what's going on in Lebanon. So what you're about to see are the true dangers that these reporters face every single day just trying to report on what the IDF is doing in South Lebanon.
I'm reporting to you from the town of Brigalia, which just a few minutes ago was threatened by the Israeli army with a forced displacement order. So it was threatened with a forced displacement order. This gas station is an Amana gas station. There's the explosion. In an escalation of violence yesterday, the Israeli army launched attacks on 92 Lebanese towns and villages, and as you can see, they are still attacking us now. The Air Force is still flying overhead. I'll keep you updated as I can.
Further rocket attacks were reported against Nahariya and admitted.
Now, thankfully, those reporters were okay, but as you can see, their indiscriminate bombing of not only military but civilian infrastructure as well is more than clear. Now, if you would like to see and support some of these reporters yourselves, please follow Courtney Bonneau Images on X. That is CBONNEAU Images, and please support her work. She is doing all of the dangerous and hard groundwork in order to give us this reporting that is completely censored through the Israeli and mainstream American media. To me, their true motives are to take and seize this territory. This also goes into my other question, has Israel fueled the rising anti-Semitism around the world by the relentless military actions, and how it plays into the Islamic migration crisis that is taking place across the globe as well. So what I'm about to show you is a portion of the live stream where I was testing my new software and discussing this very topic. If you want to watch the full version, where I also update on the war in Iran, it is on my YouTube and my X account in the live sections. However, there is audio issues throughout the beginning half, so be warned. So let's get into another episode of the Vitko Verdict. Has Israel fueled the rise in anti-Semitism? Because a lot of these attacks are blatant anti-Semitic attacks. And people are trying to collectively punish the Jewish people because they look at it as fair, since the Jewish people are trying to collectively punish Iranians, Palestinians, Lebanese, whoever. And this is where you have, like, it's I'm not saying that it's what Netanyahu and the Israeli government wants, but it literally gives them more power to say, look, anti-Semitism is on the rise. We have to go and combat this. And it's going to result in a lot more restriction of freedoms and a lot more anti-Semitism laws, and a lot more laws on American soil, and a lot more constrained to Americans. First, we'll go into, I kind of already went over this while I was testing the audio, but the failure of our justice system with the shooting that went on in Old Dominion. And this was an act of terrorism, they're calling it. It was specifically targeting military personnel, American military personnel. It was by a former National Guards member who, in 2016, attempted to provide funds to the Islamic State terrorist group, ISIS, and even pled guilty to attempting to provide material support. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison, as well as 5 years supervised release. It shows he was released in 2024. Under federal law, defendants must serve at least 85% of their sentence, even when it's on good behavior. Yeah, so that's kind of wild. From 2016 to 2024, and he was sentenced to 11 years, 5 years supervised release. To me, it's like, it's a clear failure of the justice system. I mean, providing funds to ISIS while you're an active member of the military, it should be like high treason in the military tribunal. Like, this is what's insane to me. I'm not saying he should have been like executed or anything. Obviously, that's a blatant violation. The state shouldn't execute anybody, but like, he at least should have been forced to carry out his full sentence. If he got 11 years, we should not have seen this man until 2027. But I guess, yeah, it's just insane. It's just it's a tragedy. This is exactly what happened. This is what happens, is a tragedy. Is it just, you can't justify these things, and it's not like we're trying to justify these things when we say this is blowback, but we're giving causation to, like, hey, we were a lot safer before this war started in Iran. And this war has been consistently framed as trying to make the American people safer from Iran. But ever since the war started, we've been actively less safe in America. So it's completely having the opposite effect. And they're going to use this as more casus belli, as to get troops on the ground, to add more assets into the Iran, to ramp it up. Because if they keep hitting us back, and God forbid we get a huge 9/11 style terrorist attack, it's going to be full scale. It could even end up with nuclear war, because Iran is such a complex and difficult terrain to manage that, like, that might be the only option. So let's hope it doesn't get to that point. And I guess all we can do is hope. At this point, we're already in the war. We already started. It doesn't seem like Iran wants to back down as much as Trump saying that it's us. Then there's so many conflicting reports, because you have Donald Trump actively saying Iran is begging for a ceasefire. We're not giving it to them until our mission's complete. But then you got conflicting reports saying as soon as the Ayatollah was confirmed dead, Trump reached out to Iran and tried to broker a ceasefire, and Iran declined and said, no, like, we're going to continue this war until we can guarantee it is not just going to happen again in 6 months. So we're getting a lot of mixed signals from everywhere of what's actually going on here. We'll get into a little Truth Social post, of course, because he has to use his fake social media instead of a real one. This is, try to resize it a little bit. Donald Trump on his Truth Social. The United States has beaten and completely decimated Iran, both militarily, economically, and in every other way. But the countries of the world that receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage, and we will help a lot. U.S. will coordinate with those countries so that everything goes smoothly. And, well, this should have always been a team effort, and now it will be. It will bring the world together towards harmony, security, and everlasting peace. Donald J. Trump. I mean, so yes, he's attempting to force the other countries to help us secure the Strait of Hormuz because we can't do it alone. The U.S. military has already, or the U.S. Navy, I guess I should say, it's not the military, has stated, yeah, no, we cannot do this by ourselves. You're gonna need some help because this originally came after Donald Trump posted, the straits aren't closed, you guys are good, we'll give you U.S. Navy escorts, and the U.S. Navy was like, no, we won't. No, we won't. We do not have the capabilities right now to be able to escort and pull away from where our positions are. We can't do it. And now he's like, well, yeah, the other countries can escort themselves. They should have been doing this the whole entire time. So it's kind of insane that like every single thing that we're hearing is the war's over, we've won so hard, they've been beaten down to the ground, and then it's like, but we need other countries to come send their military assets to the Strait of Hormuz because we can't secure it. And it's like, okay, so like, which one is it? Can you did you win? Is it over? Or can you not hold the Strait of Hormuz? Like, it is just so laughable, this administration, and how much they can just shift and how much like mental gymnastics they do in order to seem like what they're doing is smart or somehow like 5D chess. And then the fact that like the people that also do mental gymnastics to like support this is what's even crazier. Like there's people who are literally diehard Trump supporters so hard that they are like, yes, it's all about China, Russia, it's all this. And it's like, we're so much safer now. Thank you, Mr. President. We're selling our oil so much higher and our gas prices cost so much more, but we're getting America rich. It's like, dude, how brain dead do you have to be? These are like, this is the arguments. You know what I mean? So this is now we're going to kind of pivot to the rise of anti-Semitism and if Israel is the true fuel of this, which I don't think it's like only them, obviously, but it's definitely a cause. Here we have what happened in Michigan, synagogue shooter. So the suspect in Thursday's attack on Temple, Israel, in the West Bloomfield Township, Michigan, has been identified as Amin Muhammad Ghazali. The Department of Homeland Security confirmed the name, provided details of his immigration history. An official said he was born in Lebanon in 1985 and entered the United States May 2011. Entering Lebanon is where the key thing is because, of course, there's no motive yet. But what we do actually have proof of, which was reported from Dropsite News' Ryan Grimm and substantiated by multiple other sources, is the man who rammed his explosives into Michigan synagogue today I'm in Gaza. Um, he posted these photos overnight on his social media of his family members, including 2 young children who were killed in a recent Israeli attack on Lebanon. So we actually have more confirmation down here with the story. This was posted on March 6th, and these are the confirmations of the death of his family members in the recent Israeli assault on Lebanon. So that kind of just brings us to really what I kind of one of the topics I wanted to touch on is you now have Israeli action in Lebanon and in other countries directly affecting Jewish Americans on the ground. Now, everybody can say, like, this was a blatant anti Semitic terrorist attack, and that is true. It definitely was, because blaming the Israeli government or blaming the Jewish people for something the Israeli government did is, like, almost the true definition of collective punishment, anti Semitism. However, Israel is actively doing the same thing with Palestinians and Lebanese and Iranians. They're calling them Amalek. Starting they're starting an invasion of Lebanon actively. So what we really want to get into is, I guess today, is Lebanon. Because Lebanon has a complicated history with Iran. Hezbollah, the creation of that, is also complicated. And I think it's kind of important to understand how you get to this point, because a lot of when people try to argue with this and debate this, and they're like, what's happening today is what matters. What happened in the 80s and the 70s doesn't matter. But it's not true, because the reason why this is happening today is because of what happened in the 70s and the 80s, and with the massacres and the bombings and what went on in Beirut. So this is important context that you really do have to bring up. So this is important to understand what's going on in Lebanon. So first, I think we're going to cover today what is going on in Lebanon. After the death of Khamenei, you had retaliatory strikes from Hezbollah, where they broke the ceasefire. They weren't the first ones to break the ceasefire. Israel has been breaking it multiple times, but they actively broke it by sending ballistic missiles into Israel. Israel responded by multiple Israeli strikes on not only military assets, but healthcare facilities, ambulances, anywhere that they claim Hezbollah is hiding. So we're going to get into some of the footage from the ground here, of what has been going on with these Israeli strikes in Lebanon.
Arrive at the site of a building that was struck just yesterday. A neighbour came over to tell us his version of events.
So did you see the strike happen?
Yes.
What did you see?
بس الانفجار ونزلت الصاروخ شقفة ايد وشلنا صبيع لاولاد صغيره هاي الاهداف الارهابيه اللي اسرائيل عم يضربها فقط لا غير.
We can see Israeli jets overhead, and these guys are saying that we have to get out of this area now.
According to Hezbollah and the neighbour, 8 people were killed here, including 3 children. This is not the only accusation of civilians being killed in this war, though Israel maintains that it only targets Hezbollah infrastructure. Yesterday, a building in the nearby town of Tamnin al-Tata was struck. 16-year-old Syrian boy Mohammed was dragged from under the rubble. He says at least 6 of his family members didn't make it.
كنا نايمين الصبح اجت طيارة توفى أبويا وتوفت أمي وموت أخي وأولادها.
I'm so sorry. When did this happen?
كنت نايم على صوت الضربة. شفت بس أبويا مقطع تقطيع.
I'm so sorry. That must have been terrifying.
حسيت لغايتني أنا ولا أبويا شايف أبويا هيك.
One of so many lives torn apart by a war
Mike repeat it. No, but this is really heartbreaking to watch, and this is what's important to understand, like what actively is going on in Lebanon, and how someone in America who was from Lebanon and is Lebanese, whose family still lives there, could commit a terrorist attack on American soil because of what Israel is actively doing in Lebanon. Here's some more reporting from the ground in Lebanon, and I just think it's heartbreaking and it's tough footage to watch, but it's important to get the context of when Hezbollah fires missiles back at Israel for the death of the Ayatollah, what Israel's response to this is. And it's not just hitting Hezbollah, it's just murdering civilians.
I'm reporting to you again from the city of Saida. The Israeli army has committed another massacre this morning, leaving 8 people dead and 9 injured. Here's a rundown of yesterday's Israeli attacks on Lebanon. Airstrikes hit 43 towns, drone strikes in 14 towns, including an attack on Lebanon University, which killed a professor and one of his assistants. Artillery shelling of 11 towns. The latest casualty toll as of last night from the Ministry of Public Health, it was 687 people killed and 1,500 people wounded. These figures are sure to rise. Clearly, we have multiple massacres happening here in Lebanon today.
So the number she's citing isn't just today, by the way. She's citing the numbers since the ceasefire that was brokered in 2024. So since Israel and Hezbollah signed the 2024 ceasefire, Israeli strikes have killed over 600 Lebanese, whether they're all civilians or some militants. It's unclear. And those are also Lebanon's health ministry numbers, which are important to say because Lebanon government and Hezbollah are 2 different enemies. Hezbollah runs an autonomous zone south of the Litani River, and they're essentially at like a mini Cold War with the Lebanon, as you could say, because Lebanese government want to disarm Hezbollah because that's what Israeli government wants them to do to stop the airstrikes. But they know as soon as they actually go to try to disarm Hezbollah, it's going to be a full armed conflict, civil war, and could completely destabilize the region. And that's kind of what Israel wants, obviously, because then they can just go in and clean up afterwards. So it's kind of just the more important context of what she's talking about. That's not just today; it's overall. So when she's referring to massacres, she's stating like when the Israeli airstrikes hit a civilian infrastructure, like the one there that killed 8 civilians. So one of these Israeli strikes on that infrastructure is who killed the gunman, or I guess there weren't a gunman, but who killed the terrorist who committed the attack in Michigan's family. And it's just complete cause. It's just right there. Like I know, like we're still waiting, and it's all speculation because they didn't officially release the motive yet. But I mean, when you see what Israel is doing to Lebanon, and they're saying that they're targeting ambulances and medical facilities because without any evidence, they're saying Hezbollah uses ambulances for military purposes, is just insanity. So we're going to go to this clip from Dropsite News about recent strikes.
Israeli airstrikes hit a medical center in South Lebanon, killing 12, including a doctor, paramedics, and nurses. The Israeli strike hit the center while medical teams were gathering to break their fast after their return from a mission to treat the wounded from an earlier Israeli strike. The Lebanese health ministry explained that this attack was the second in just a few hours targeting the health sector in South Lebanon. A previous attack targeted paramedics in the town of Sawana, killing 2 of them. Later, Israel released a statement accusing Hezbollah of extensively using ambulances for military purposes. They warned that the military use of medical facilities and ambulances must cease immediately, otherwise Israel will, and I quote, act in accordance with international law. Israel did not release any evidence to substantiate this accusation. The Lebanese Ministry of Health rejected these claims and emphasized that these claims are nothing more than a justification for the crimes Israel is committing against medical workers in Lebanon. The ministry also revealed that the total number of medical workers killed by Israel since March 2nd has now reached 26. This, according to the ministry, constitutes the most compelling evidence of an Israeli pattern to target medical workers, which was first noticed in the previous round of fighting. This pattern has now expanded to actually target the Lebanese Red Cross for the first time since October 2023.
Yeah, so this is what's going on with in Lebanon. Of course, that video you've seen of Netanyahu was the infamous one that's going around, and people are saying that's an AI generated video of Netanyahu because his teeth disappear at some point and you see him grow fingers or something. I think it's just an optical illusion. I think Netanyahu's alive. I really don't think there's any substantiation to the claims that he's dead. But again, who knows? We'll see. What's going on in Lebanon is sad. It's what kind of stemmed from what happened in Lebanon through the 80s. So to kind of give you a slight rundown of what happens. In 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon. Their casus belli was because there was a gunman that was from what they considered a splinter PLO organization attempted to assassinate Israeli ambassador in London. Israel blamed the PLO for this. The PLO denied it. So who knows who is the one that responsible? Israel thinks it was them, so they invaded Lebanon in order to seize southern Lebanon, which is where the PLO was. The PLO is kind of like a group of Palestinian organizations, and a lot of them, some of them are made up of like the ancestors of the original Palestinians that were displaced from the 1948 creation of Israel. Some of them were just diaspora from like all over the area of it's basically kind of like the Shiite Muslim group that and the Palestinians, and they all kind of congregated together to the south of Lebanon, the south of the Litani River. So the Israel invades, there's a big war. They win. They kind of decimate it. They bombard it. And PLO withdrawals. They're backed by Syria and at this point too. And what you have happen is you have like a lot of refugee camps from all displaced Lebanese and Palestinians who are just civilians who weren't involved in this, just in camps because, of the war, their house is getting destroyed. The leader that Israel wanted to put in charge of Lebanon, which is one of their main reasons for invading, is sort of this like Christian militia commander. He gets assassinated days before he's elected. Now, he's assassinated by the Syrian Socialist National Party. They claim the attack. However, Israel still blames Palestinians and the PLO. So the IDF, who is surrounding these camps and are supposed to be in charge of protecting the camps, they allegedly just kind of turn a blind eye and let all these militiamen come in, and they murder over 3,000 Palestinian and Lebanese civilians in the camps. So because of this slaughter, it's kind of the PLO members that abandoned the war, that retreated, as well as the survivors of the slaughter, people whose family members died in the slaughter, they get together, they form a group, and they are trained by about 1,000 to 1,500, depending on your source, Iranian IRGC members. with Syria's approval. That group becomes Hezbollah. And their main focus is to get revenge for all of their brothers, sisters, civilians, everyone who was just massacred in this massacre that happened from the militiamen after the assassination of the Christian leader that they put in charge. So what happens is you actually get MNF forces that come in and help it out. And what the MNF forces are actually U.S. Marines and French soldiers. They are there to help stabilize the region. Now, they were originally in the area while the war was going on, and they were backing Israel. So when Hezbollah gets created and they declare their manifesto, they decide to bring the MNF back to the Beirut airport to try to stabilize what's going on in the region after the massacre and after the assassination of the leader that they put in. That's when Hezbollah, after they get permission from the IRGC, decide to commit the Beirut bombing via 2 trucks, one that kills 241 U.S. American soldiers, and the other one that kills 58 American troops. This is when the America decides to pull out because they realize we've only destabilized the region, and now our soldiers are actively dying in a terrorist attack because they looked at them as a pro-Israeli invading force that was entering Lebanon to help Israel. That is one of the 1983 Beirut bombing is one of the casus belli, of course, that Trump listed as the reason we're going war with Iran today, because we never got retribution for that. Although, like, that's part of the blowback scale. That was blowback for another thing. So that if we go and get retribution for that, we were just creating more blowback. So, like, you can argue that, honestly, Reagan did the right thing by pulling out and saying we shouldn't have been there in the first place. It was a tragedy. That's it. So from 1985 to 2000, the Hezbollah resistance versus Israel is kind of like a guerrilla war in the South. And Israel eventually withdraws in 2000s, and Hezbollah remains in control of south of the Litani River as sort of like an autonomous zone where they're trying to create their own Shiite state off of the same type of governance rules as Iran and the Islamic Revolution in Iran happened. That's sort of their political model for this, which is why they're known as an Iranian proxy, because they were trained by the IRGC and they used Iran's government structure as sort of like their model for what they want to achieve in their autonomous zone and eventually in all of Lebanon. So what you really have then, we'll kind of fast forward because there's always like back and forths, but it really escalated on October 8th, 2003. This was when Hezbollah rockets North Israel in Hamas solidarity post October 7th, and they basically are backing Hamas's attack on Israel against the occupation. They see this as their opportunity to attack. And what happens in return is Israel full on escalates and then invades into Lebanon with over 1 million Lebanese displaced, 2,000 Lebanese dead, and it culminates in a November ceasefire in 2024. The U.S. and French broker it, and Hezbollah, south of the Litani River, is now banned. They're supposed to disarm. Israel then is supposed to withdraw within 60 days, and then there's supposed to be a monitoring period that is going to extend to all of the border points. So Hezbollah does disarm south of the Litani River. However, there's different groups of Hezbollah north of the Litani River that don't disarm because it specifically was not in the ceasefire agreement. And that's sort of how they get their reach around, because they move a lot of their munitions north of the Litani River and they say, well, we only had to disarm south. Because of this, there was consistent Israeli violations of the ceasefire. Over 10,000 airspace flights, 1.4 thousand airstrikes, and over 400 Lebanese killed between then and February. As we just got reported, between February and now, it's rose to over 600 Lebanese killed. Now Hezbollah it's not like they haven't violated ceasefire as well. They've retaliated multiple times by sending in missiles, and of course Hezbollah has justified it by Israelis saying that they violated the ceasefire first. Israel has justified it by saying Hezbollah was non-compliant in the ceasefire, so that's why they went. And now they've been pressuring the Lebanon's government to fully disarm all of Hezbollah, north and south of the Litani River, knowing that this will cause a Lebanese civil war. The government can't do it alone, and they are attempting to destabilize the region. That's kind of been like the Cold War ceasefire that's been going on, let's say between like February and March, a little before that, but we could say between like November 2024 and March 2026. That's kind of what's been going on. Just like rockets, strikes, back and forth, nothing crazy. Then the death of Khamenei happens, and Hezbollah decides to strike Israel in response. And they send over a bunch of ballistic missiles. I believe they all got intercepted. There's no reports that Hezbollah's has struck anywhere in Israel on their first strike through. And that kind of prompted the Lebanese government to ban all of Hezbollah's arms. They finally went through with it. Israel then bombs Beirut, leaves 31 dead. And now the IDF is kind of like, it's too late for the Lebanese government. They're too weak to deal with Hezbollah. They're now planning to do a full-scale invasion of Lebanon. And their whole goal with that is to fully expel Hezbollah once and for all, get rid of them. That's it. Their violation of the ceasefire was their last straw. So as you can tell, like, the history is complicated. It's been a back and forth struggle for years. You can even go before the 80s and keep going back to the original creation of the 1948 borders of Israel, where all of the countries around them did not want that to happen. They wanted their land back from Great Britain when they decided to just give the colony its own autonomous state instead of giving it back to the countries that they, colonized the territory from. It's complicated. And the reason, that's why it's like, I'm not taking a side in either of this, because honestly, at some point, it's both of them are just abhorrent and terrible to each other, and it's going to be, it's their business is kind of the point. As an American citizen, we shouldn't be funding, we shouldn't be involved in any of this. So that's where the critiques come in, is why are we getting involved in these just ancient, like, blowback built up holy wars in a sense? Because, like, what else could you call them at this point? Like, if these aren't considered wars, then I'm really not sure what a holy war is. You know what I mean? Because, like, it's clearly biblical at this point. There's so much talk of the third temple being rebuilt and all this. And I guess that's, like, at this point, to just kind of wrap everything up, the worry is that, Israel's going to actually bomb the temple or the mosque in Jerusalem and attempt to rebuild the third temple, because that's not going to just unite Shiite Muslims. That could unite all of the Muslims together, because that's like the big no-no, and that is what was always predicted would cause World War III, yada, yada, yada. Like, if you want to get into all the conspiracies, I just don't want to be involved. I don't think the U.S. should be involved in any of these holy wars and any of these conflicts. I think at this point, it's like, just get us out. Like, what is the point of all of this war of choice. It's caused way more problems everywhere than it has. And I mean, we really didn't even get into the whole migration crisis that all of these perpetual wars that Israel and all the Western countries are doing cause. Because a lot of people really don't understand, and especially like this is where like Tucker Carlson and Pierce Morgan, a lot of them don't fully grasp what is happening. I mean, I think Tucker's starting to understand, but when you bring up Islam, how it's incompatible with the West and how they're trying to take over Sharia law, this and all of that, when you actually break down what is happening, this is what's happening, right? When people come to America, especially we can even say back in like Ellis Island days, you had people that were coming to seek a better life because they were escaping their government. They felt unrepresented by their governments. They felt oppressed. They felt they wanted freedom. When you get mass refugees that come here, they're not coming here because they're oppressed and because they want freedom and because they hate their government. They're coming here because a foreign country, whether it's us, Israel, any of the Western countries, any other country that's not theirs, actively destroyed their home and bombed their home and forcibly displaced them. So when you have mass groups of people who are forced out of their homes and forcibly displaced because of foreign intervention and not because they don't like their government, they're going to congregate in communities together because that's what all immigrants always done. That's why you have, when 1900s in Ellis Island, Chinatown, and you had the little Italian streets and all the Irish got together and the Polish communities and the Jewish communities, like that's still happening today. However, when you have it happen from a mass refugee pipeline and not people seeking a better government, they liked the government that they lived under. They were happy living under Sharia law. We actively destroyed their home and destroyed the place that they felt most represented. So of course they're going to come here, form communities, and try to shape the community around them to represent their worldview and how they view it should be ran. So when you get all these communities get together and now they're attempting to put Sharia law in a community they lived, is because they liked living under Sharia law. Some of them come from communist countries, dictatorships, and they enjoy the government. And the reason they moved wasn't because the government was bad, was because we forced them to move here through bombing and destroying their entire homes. So when you have a mass refugee pipeline, let's take Somalia, for instance, all these people coming from Somalia, it's not because they don't like the Somali government or Somaliland or any of that. It's literally because we destroyed their homes. They're going to come here and make it like Somalia, where they're from, where they're used to, because they liked living there. They didn't move here because they didn't like it. And a lot of people don't understand that. It's not that Muslims are attempting to move into all these Western countries and turn it to Sharia law and make every country Muslim. They're literally getting forcibly displaced by all of the Western countries and all the foreign intervention, and they have nowhere else to go but these countries. And then they want to make it like their home, because that's where they were from. That's where they felt represented. That's where we kicked them out of. Of course, they want to make it feel like home to them, because they didn't leave because they didn't hate their government. They left because we forced them to. In a sense, they might have left because they hate us. Like, that's the part that a lot of people are missing from this endless refugee pipeline that's been created. It's not only diluting everybody's like voting power and population and like diluting the culture of Western culture that everybody wants and so precious. It's actively destroying the Western culture because we've actively destroyed their culture. It's not that Muslims want to destroy the West. It's that literally the West has been attempting to destroy Muslims and their civilian infrastructure and their homes for 40 plus years, and they literally have nowhere else to go. And they still believe in their religion and in their government because like it was working for them until we murdered them. So that's where you kind of have to understand what's going on. If you want to stop the mass migration and if you're really against Sharia law coming to America, then the answer is to stop bombing fucking Iran and to stop going into all these foreign countries and eviscerating their countries and civilian infrastructure and making it unlivable, so they have to go and move to Britain and they have to move to America because there's nowhere else for them to live. Like, it should be like obvious, but for people it's not. People would really like to believe that no, it's just Islam. It's just because they're Muslims. It's because they're brown. It's like that's where the racism and the Islamophobia really come out. Because on top of anti-Semitism that Israel's fueling, they're also fueling an intense Islamophobia. And they're literally trying to fuel anti-Semitism and Islamophobia at the same time to start like this culture holy war. And it's like anybody with like any type of depth and any type of brain that could really take back and objectively look at all of this understands that, like, you know, we're being played. This is not the actual cause. This is none of these religions are actually the cause. You know what I mean? Like, you can say, oh, Christianity should be everywhere because look how great Christian values are, all you want, but then you ignore the Crusades. And when the Pope actually was in charge of the entire world empire, he was actively trying to murder people. So, like, no matter what, the authoritative regime and the state, no matter who's in charge, even if it is a religion, even if it's your religion, it's not good. The state is always the issue, you know? That's the whole, I guess that's the whole point of like the libertarian platform too, is like the coercive state is where it comes, and all of the authoritativeness that comes from the state and people who head it is always the root cause of all of these issues, whether what they try to paint it as and what they try to pit everybody against each other. It's really not what's going on. And thank you guys for joining in today. Stay safe out there.